Hindsighters, welcome to In Depth with Ty Barnett and our special guest, Brandy Springs. She is a Doctor of Education candidate at Concordia University Irvine and a seasoned educator with over 20 years of experience in K through 12 and higher education. She currently serves as a university supervisor and college professor, specializing in culturally responsive instruction and faculty development. Her dissertation explores the underrepresentation of African American women in higher education leadership with the focus on mentorship, systemic barriers, and strategic for creating equitable academic environments. We will have a discussion this evening about future Dr. Brandy Springs' journey, values, and expertise, especially tailored for someone from Concordia University Irvine, where emphasis is often placed on servant leadership, innovation, and faith informed practice. Future Dr. Brandy Springs, welcome to Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where there's always something good to talk about.
Hi, thank you.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. Let's discuss the personal and academic journey and tell us what inspired you to pursue a doctor of education and why did you choose Concordia University Irvine?
From a very early age, my mom was very encouraging in teaching at the higher level in higher education. And so I knew in order to teach in higher ed, I needed a master's degree. And so I went and got a master's degree and I applied for positions for several years and I wasn't getting any callbacks. And then I went and obtained another master's degree, thinking that that would help, and it did not. And so, after just doing some more research, I said, well, I might as well get a doctorate in education. I enjoy the field, and I was hoping that that would just put my name out there, for people to see that EdD or the PhD behind my name. I was hoping that that would help me gain a little more traction, I guess, in applying for positions in higher ed.
Sure.
And so it was really my mom's and my aunt's persistent in education and just continuing to move forward in that. And in terms of Concordia, it was it was God actually. I had a friend reach out to me and say that she had a friend that was receiving her doctorate and she needed educators to participate in her dissertation, in her survey. So I said, it was interesting because a few months before I received that call, I was praying. I was asking God, should I move forward with the doctorate or is two masters enough? Is that going to be enough? And so less than 30 days later, I felt that that was an answer to that prayer. And so I helped her I participated in her dissertation survey. And then afterwards, I just picked her brain about the doctorate program at Concordia. Concordia is a Christian-based school, so that was fantastic. And we talked about the program, her experience, her specific content matter. So that's why I chose Concordia. They're very welcoming. I believe it's a great school. I made some really great connections. So,
Okay, no, that's wonderful. So let me ask you, can you describe a pivotal moment in your academic or professional life that brought you to this point? I mean, I know you just basically shared that it was
yeah. Mhm.
unpersonal, it was your mother and your auntie. And you also hinted on or you stated like you had like two master degrees and you still weren't getting the job or recognition that you deserved or wanted. Do you have you ever received an answer as to why?
I I'm thinking it just wasn't my time. I needed a little bit more experience. You can have the degrees, but and now that I'm older, I think it's also important for you to have experience.
Sure.
So, I think that's the answer to that. Um,
That pivotal moment in the academic professional. Yeah.
yeah, the pivotal moment was for sure me continuing to obtain more degrees and nothing happening. So
Wow.
I said, I have to do something, I have to do something more. And I am passionate about the field of education. So I knew I wanted to stay in it. And this is my second career. So I knew I wanted to stay in it and just give back to those that look like me.
I love that. Now, when you tell us about the power of storytelling in higher education.
Mm. So in doing this research, I have found and read about so many women that have been on this path, that has been on the path of trying to get into higher ed, number one, and once they're in higher ed, trying to climb up the ladder, number two. And so I've heard them just pour out to me how difficult it has been for them to get their foot in the door. And then once their foot is in the door, they're they're by themselves. There's very minimal support to help them to climb that ladder. So those I enjoy listening to stories and I enjoy telling stories. So, when you tell someone a story, they're the listening is a little bit different. It's more enjoyable, I feel.
Sure, and I can definitely agree with that. So when we pivot on to your what I think is what you're doing now is very, very important work, your research and dissertation. What is that central focus of your dissertation and the heart of your why? I always like to say your what is your why? Make them cry and dry their eye. So what is your why behind the research and the specific topic that you selected?
Okay. So my central focus is the underrepresentation of African American women in higher education.
Hmm.
My why is in my entire educational career from preschool to currently in my doctoral program, I have had less than a handful of educators that look like me,
Wow.
be it men and women. However, since this is a focus on women,
Sure.
I've I've had probably two. And so, that spans a couple of decades. And so the heart of it is we're there, we're out there,
Sure.
but there's more of us that are getting into it, but we just need help. We just need support. We just need mentorship and sponsorship. We need to build that community and help one another. And, in doing my research, I saw that there is more of it in the South.
Okay.
Not a lot more, but I'm on the West Coast. So I don't see a lot of me on this coast. I don't. And so my heart is that I want to see it because we're there. We're just as educated as the next person.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's another let's throw a wrench in this. We're
Okay.
in 2025. Why do
Hmm.
you think that we're still dealing with this challenge of not seeing more women of color in the field of education? And I know that's one question there for you to ponder, but then another ask, which would be, is it that people just leaving the field and there's only a small tidbit of individuals still interested?
Hmm.
Or is it that the support is just still lacking? And why?
Okay, so you got me with the two-part question.
Uh-huh.
So to answer the first part is, regardless of us being in 2025, racism still exists.
Sure.
We can have a whole other conversation about our current government, but we're not going to go there.
Oh,
It's it's it still exists. So that's my answer to that.
okay.
Now in terms of, there's African American women that are in the adjunct role. So they're part-time.
Yeah.
They teach one, maybe two classes. And so, you're on campus once or twice a week and or you're online, so you're not seen. You're not seen.
Okay.
So we need to be in those full-time tenure track positions.
Mm,
And again, in doing my research, in looking at the mentorships and sponsorships that are available, there are still a heavy number of white men and women that are in these roles that should be mentoring African American women because we're at the adjunct level. But is that mentorship happening? It is not. And I speak from personal experience on that
sure.
because as someone that works at a community college in an adjunct position, I have never received any type of mentorship, and I've been there for a year. I've never received any of that. And I've never seen someone that looks like me in my position on campus. I'm not to say that they're not there. I just haven't seen them.
Wow. Wow. That's deep. That is deep. So with you doing this, the hope will be that in your research that it will garner more conversation about mentors and people like women of color and even men of color, but this specifically tonight is about women, that there will be some mentors showing up for each other in the space
Right.
and not just
Right.
on the part-time level. So how do you see your research contributing to the world change in education?
hmm I'm gonna backtrack a little bit
Yeah,
and
please
answer
do. Please do.
and answer your question. When I was speaking with a young lady who has her doctorate, she is a professor up North California. She explained to me the difference between a mentorship and a sponsorship, which I thought
Mm,
was fascinating. Whereas she explained the mentorship is just someone, a mentor, someone you go to and you talk to if you need help, you need advice, things of that nature. A sponsorship is someone that gets your name out there,
hmm.
someone that goes to HR or the department head or the dean and says to them, I think you should look at hiring so and so, or I think so and so will be good for this position. So sponsorships is, as I believe, after talking to this lady and someone else actually, sponsorship is more what I think we need and what I would like to do moving forward. So in my current position, I would like to say to my supervisor, if even though I've only been there a year, but if someone comes on board, a person of color, I would like to support them. Let me know how I can help them because I had to figure a lot of things out on my own the first year. And I don't want that for anyone,
Sure.
especially a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff. And I love the fact, see, what you just said was you're willing, not that you're just willing, but you're also able to assist someone else in their journey because you're here right now and you want to ensure who's coming behind you has that support. So you want to do the work so that you can still start putting those individuals out front.
Right.
Love that.
Mhm.
I love that. So that ask was, how do you see, and I guess that's how you see your research contributing to the real world change. You
Mhm.
starting with you. It starts with
Right.
the research that you're currently doing and the you're going through this process. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I also work at a online at another university in California, and so it's really just about talking to those that I report to and saying to them, if you have someone that comes on board, someone new in the field, someone that comes on board, send them my way.
Mm,
It's really about having that conversation with my supervisor, really. And so, again, in doing my research, I found that the women in these positions, because you said like I'm willing, you said I'm willing, and so it
and you're
reminded me
able
that
and able because there's a
and a
difference. There's yeah,
mhm,
there's a
right,
big difference between the two.
right, for sure. And in doing my research, I found that a lot of the women that are those full-time positions, African American women that are in those full-time positions, they didn't have the time. They were given so many other tasks, more tasks than their white counterparts. So they didn't have the time or the bandwidth to mentor the newbies. And so that's an even a whole other set of issues because why are we getting more than our white counterparts? Why is that?
It's, and you hate to say this word, that's how it's always been. In any, not just in the world of education, in life in general, right?
Right.
And that's
Mhm.
that. But what you just described is what I stated. Now they're willing bodies, but they're not able, and they're not able due to the time, the bandwidth, and the
Right.
workload that they have. They're not able to assist. They're
Right.
willing to. They may want to be just like you, a coach, a mentor, but unfortunately, due to the time and the workload that they have, they just don't have the bandwidth, even if they're
Right.
willing.
Yeah, and that holds us back. And I'm reflecting on it, and if it's okay if I
Sure,
just
absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
I was in a Zoom meeting with a group of Black women who have their doctorates, and they were explaining to me and another doctoral candidate their path, where they started, how they got to where they are, and what they're doing now. And a couple of them said they don't have a problem now in saying no. When their supervisor is coming to them and saying to them, not asking them, when they're saying to them, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, these women are saying, no, thank you. This
Wow.
is not a contract. I'm not going to keep adding extra things onto my plate because it's not my responsibility. However, when you say no,
Hmm.
it makes it seem like you're not a team player,
Or
which
a
is
target on your
unfortunate
back, or there's a target on your back
for
of,
sure.
yeah, we're being replaced, or,
Yeah, so it's like, so when they were saying that, I said, wow, that's interesting. So you want to add all these extra duties and responsibilities on me that have nothing to do with helping others, which is what we're supposed to do in education. I feel that's one of our bullet points is to help others and support others. And so that was mind blowing, mind boggling. It was just wow. But they said no. They had been doing it for years doing all these extra tasks because they thought they were supposed to, but then they had their come to Jesus moment and they said no.
wow,
So,
bold and brave, aren't they?
yeah, for sure. For
Listen, I
sure.
love that. So we can pivot to leadership and impact, which is huge. What does ethical and transformative leadership look like to you in today's educational climate?
Okay. So for me, ethical and transformative leadership, it just means having integrity,
Hmm.
leading with equity, using my voice. So how those women use their voice
Yeah.
and said no to different things using my voice. But also creating a space for people to feel like they're being heard, like how I'm trying to do now. Creating that space where people can be heard, where they can be seen. Ever since the pandemic, everyone's saying we're all in this together. But are we really?
Are we
Oh,
really?
yeah. Are we really all in this together? So that's what those two things mean to me. Really, and especially for those that have been overlooked in the past.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah. And so how do you personally, and maybe this is part of your research and dissertation, but how do you personally foster that equity and inclusion in the spaces that you specifically lead?
So for me, again, it's about listening to
Hmm.
those who wouldn't otherwise have a voice,
Hmm.
standing up for them if needed, but also teaching them to stand up for themselves,
Yeah.
making sure that they're being treated fairly and just. Mm, I try my best to lead with Christ on my shoulder. So, just being prayerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are those systematic barriers that women are facing in academia? I mean, you've already mentioned quite a few, I believe, that could align with this ask, whereas
Mhm.
that mentorship piece, right, versus the sponsorship. But what are some of those systemic um, barriers that women are facing?
Yeah, again, we have the race card. You
Hmm.
know, we're asked to do more than our white counterparts. We have the gender card. We have men, even black men, but more specifically white men, and doing it. And my research does not focus on the pay. It talks a little bit about pay,
Okay.
and in that research that I've done, and in talking to those group of women last week, the white man still gets paid more. And we have the same degree, same amount of experience, and they're getting paid more. So, how does that still happen? Like you said in 2000, like how does that still happen? So, those are some of the barriers: race, gender. Um, we're just we're just not on an even playing field
Mm.
still.
Yeah.
It's gotten better than when I would say my mom or my grandmother was alive for sure, but we should still be further along than what we are. And I'm going to bring it up again just for a hot second.
Sure.
With the current administration that we have, it may stay where it's at, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, let's pivot that
Okay.
into faith, purpose, and future, or we can say faith, resilience, and purpose, right?
Okay. Okay.
So, how does your faith inform your educational philosophy and your leadership?
So again, I have Christ on my shoulder.
Hmm.
And when I when I'm feeling the rough parts, when I'm feeling not being seen, not being heard, the injustices of this field, I'm talking to God at any given time of day or night. I have come through it because again, with having two master's degrees almost a decade ago, I persevered and I continued to apply and ask questions and go to conferences and events and just be inquisitive about how do I do this? Who do I need to speak to? So I have overcome that hurdle and I'm ready to move on to the next.
Oh, I love that. So, okay, speaking of moving on to the next, as you
Okay.
look forward, how do
Mhm.
you hope to use your degree to impact your community or the broader field?
Mhm. My original want was to be at the university level.
Hmm.
Again, after the research and after speaking with those women, community college, because from what I think, I can reach more people at the community college level and help and guide and mentor them on whatever path they choose to take, because they're in college to pursue a higher education. Maybe because, I have a lot of first time college students, so in their family. So my hope is to inspire and to move them forward on their path.
I love that. And so, what advice would you offer to aspiring educators and scholars who are just beginning their journey?
Mhm. I would say to them, make sure, like how you asked me, make sure you know your why.
Hmm.
Why do you want to be on this path? What is it? Do you just want the title? Because there are some people that just want the title. Or do you really want to put the work in that is needed? Because it is work. But if you enjoy it, my parents always told me that you don't want to have a job, you want to have a career. You want to go to some place that you enjoy going to. And I've had jobs where I don't want to go. I don't want to go. However, now when I teach at the community college, I love it. It is for me the best thing since sliced bread. I really, really enjoy it. And so I want to help, mentor, sponsor those that would not otherwise have that opportunity. And typically those people are at community colleges. So I would say to them, going back, excuse me, I would say
Oh,
to
that's
them,
fine.
know your why, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about because that is important. And make sure that you are talking to God.
I love that. Now, talk to us about about a little bit more about your research as far as the survey that you're doing that you have coming up that's very relevant. So hopefully our listeners can, we can share it out and if someone can participate, tell us what the one qualifications are because I know that deadline is coming up soon. So what
Mhm.
are those qualifications? And then tell us about the survey.
Okay, so the qualifications are you have to have a doctorate. That could be a PhD or an EdD, a doctorate. You have to be female, you have to be African American, and you have to preferably be in the higher ed space. You have to be in the higher ed space, community college, university, higher ed space. And my dissertation, it's about 13 questions just asking Black women their experiences in higher ed. So, did they run into systemic barriers? Did they have a mentorship? What got them on their path? Um, and then I have four short answer questions at the end that's asking them to go a little bit more into depth, asking questions like what changes or initiatives do they believe would better support African American women. I asked them to describe their institution's commitment to supporting African American women, and I asked them to describe their challenges or barriers. So I can have all this documented because when I first went into this dissertation, my thought was I was going to prove that we don't have the support. I was going to prove that. But that's a no-brainer. We know that we don't have the support. So I shifted a little bit and I want to talk about how to help, how to get the support. And again, that goes back to that mentorship slash sponsorship piece.
I love that.
So,
I love how you shifted from trying to figure out, to the actual solution.
yes,
You
yeah,
want a solution from this. And I love the fact that you did shift to that. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
thanks.
So my survey takes about 10 minutes and it's open for a few more days until Monday, June 30th, because I have to write up the results and present it to my committee.
I love that. Well, we are going to wish you the absolute best of success on your continued journey. Future
Thank you.
Dr. Brandy Springs.
Dude, thank
So,
you.
yes, we would like to thank you for sharing such valuable information and being transparent with our listeners on this evening. And we want to wish you the best of success on your continued journey of greatness. Do you have any other information or, any other advice you would like to impart on the listeners before we close out?
Yes, I would like to say if you're not listening or watching this until after the survey is closed, I do still ask if you are in the space of mentoring or supporting or sponsoring other African American men or women, I truly encourage you to do that because it helps. God has put us, my belief is that one of the reasons we're put here is to help others, is to disciple to other people. So if you can help someone, I encourage you to do it. I will have my contact information in the description so you can reach out to me if you would like. If you have questions, I'm fairly new in the field of higher ed, but I'm willing to share the things that I have learned, the things that I would do differently, the things that I'm going to change next year. So I'm here to support as well.
I love that. Now, would you like anybody to reach out to you via your social media handles?
You know, social media and
You're not friends.
we are. I mean, LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Brandy Springs, Brandy with the Y, Springs, Springs. So you can find me on LinkedIn.
Super
Yeah.
fantastic. So there you go. They can reach out if they have any advice or would like to share their testimonies with you. Then that way they can reach you on LinkedIn at Brandy with the Y Springs on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. So we love that. So listeners, thank you for tuning in this evening to In Depth with Ty Barnett on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where there's always something good to talk about. Remember to visit our website at www.hindsightmediaradio.com. Again, we thank the amazing future Dr. Brandy Springs for joining us on this evening. Please make sure when you tune in before June 30th that you complete that survey if you meet those qualifications that she shared with us, and we will put those in the description as well. And as Brandy stated, if you're unable to complete that survey or you do not meet those qualifications after the date, if you have any information or you have a testimony that you want to share with her, feel free to check her out on LinkedIn, Brandy with the Y and Springs. Again, www.hindsightmediaradio.com. Good night.